She's back. After going viral talking to Trump in an Atlanta Chick-fil-A, Michaelah Montgomery wants more. Right now, the Clark Atlanta grad says she's ready to work inside the Trump administration. But she's also eyeing something else, public office. She told me what a Trump endorsement might mean for that dream and why she wants older Black people to stop preaching to her and other young MAGA-loving conservatives of color. In her view, you might do better to just listen, because she's part of a new rebellion. One we're seeing from a generation that refuses to be told who they are or what to believe. They don't want to be preached to, but they do want to engage. And when they do, they're unapologetic. Political activists like Michaelah, even if you don't agree with them, they do present us with a choice. You can ignore them, you could shame them, or sit down and have a conversation with them. Because real dialogue, even when it includes contradiction, is about respect. It's also about discovery. I mean, if we really want to understand what's shifting with young Black voters, then listening instead of lecturing might be where it starts. Let's get into it. How did Chick-fil-A come about?
So I actually got a call the night before from my homegirl, Dom, and she asked me if I wanted to go see President Trump the next day. And I'm thinking it's a speaking engagement. So I'm like, I mean, yeah, I'll go see him. And then she goes, all right, well, we're going to meet him. And I was like, what do you mean meet him? She's like, this isn't just a speech. This is like a meet and greet. Like, we're going to shake his hand, get a picture and everything. And I was like, oh, girl, I'm absolutely going.
Let me give you a hug.
And she asked me if I knew anyone else that might be interested in meeting him. And so I do have a small business called Conserve the Culture, and I would mobilize a lot of the AUC students who are also HBCU students. And so I have a group chat with about 250 of those students. And so I just put in the group chat, do any of y'all want to meet Trump tomorrow? And they were like, the Donald Trump? And I was like, yeah, Big Don, that one. And they were like, yes, Kayla, we all want to go. And then so the next morning, I get word that it's actually going to be at the Chick-fil-A that's right near campus. It was right there in Vine City in the West End. And so we go, I go there because my daughter at the time was going to school right up the street. And the students actually walked over, like they all met up at the library and walked over because I thought that we were going to have to get some Ubers to take them to somewhere down the street or across town or whatever. But they were like, oh, it's Chick-fil-A, we're just going to walk. And so that's why in the viral clip, you see me. And then there's like 20 HBCU students all there, and they all represented all 4 universities. Well, colleges and universities. There's only one university. No shade.
I put canvassers together. So all these HBCU students that you see here, I brought them here to meet you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Yes, we've also knocked doors for you in the past for your past re-election bid and when you ran the first time. Yes.
Wow.
I was interning for the GAGOP at that time as well. Yeah. Wow. Doing a lot for your tax credit reform bill and everything like that.
Well, we took care of those colleges. And
Sure did. Much better than Biden did. So I want to know that. This is Clark Atlanta. This is Spelman. This is Morehouse. This is Morris Brown. All
Isn't that great?
So I don't care what the media tells you, Mr. Trump. We support you.
We love you.
Okay.
The part that a lot of people didn't see was that Trump had turned around and had asked everybody, so how can I help you? And all the kids are like, I can't afford tuition. I can't afford groceries. I can't afford to pay for my school supplies. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, why do you guys all have like similar issues? So that's when I was like, they need a representative. Who better than me? So I was like, well, Mr. Trump, these are all actually HBCU students. This is Morehouse, Spelman, Clark Atlanta University, and Morris Brown College, all here to see you. So I don't care what the media says. Clearly, you have support on this side.
Thank you, sweetheart. That's really nice. No, we did. We took care of the Black colleges, universities. They're taken care of now, and she understands it. A lot of people don't understand it. Biden did nothing for them, and I did everything.
But I said, clearly we support you. Next thing you know, before I even left the restaurant, I was all over the internet. Like it was the most insane experience.
I wonder how that was received, because here you are, You're poised, you're confident, you're outspoken, you bring facts not everybody would agree with, and you're unapologetic. So when things blew up, went viral, and you got back around folks, back to campus, family who perhaps was not as conservative as you evolved into, what was the honest reaction?
So the thing about it is, for everybody who thought it was like a setup or whatever, I am literally that crazy in real life. Like that is me. So the thing for me is when I went back home to family, because I don't attend Clark anymore. So when I, left the restaurant, people were hitting me up like, "Whoa, Kayla, you always said you would do this." Like, "Wow, Kayla, like that's really you." Like, no, that's everybody in the comments. Not too much of my friend. She's really like that. Like the personality is there. And the thing about it is, I think that a lot of people couldn't or hadn't seen somebody with such a big personality also be smart. And so, like, no shade to anybody else, but we have seen in the conservative space some people who have big personalities, but a lot of us would feel like they're kind of an embarrassment to us because of the things that they do or the things that they say. So for me to have this big, "Oh yeah, Mr. Trump," like, "Yeah, tell my mama I made it." Like, what are y'all talking about? I'm right here with a billionaire. He just gave me a hug. Like, who are y'all? Yes, I have made it. Proximity to power matters. And all those folks talking about manifestation, this is how you manifest. I see myself in the room with billionaires. Like, tell my mother I have made it. I don't regret it at all. And so,
Mom is
yes,
happy.
like the honest reaction was, "Caleb been crazy." Honestly, you know what my mother said? I called my mom. I was like, "Well, have y'all seen it?" And I was like, "What?" No, excuse me. It was my dad. My daddy was like, "You done found somebody just as crazy as you, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, pretty much." So the honest reaction for me, for myself, my personal experience was everybody was like, "Kayla, like, this doesn't surprise us at all." Nobody was surprised. And then I interned with the GAGOP from 2018 from 2018 fall to summer 2019. So like a year and a half. And this is while I was at Clark. So it's not like it was any secret that Kayla worked under Trump, that Kayla supported Trump. It was never a thing. I talked about it openly in all of my classes. Like, I was a poli-sci major. So whenever we'd be discussing something, different policies, history, whatever, I'd be like, "Well, my Republican friend said," or at my internship, I just learned. And they'd be like, Kayla, that's really interesting." And at the time in class, nobody was like, "How dare you work for them?" or "How dare you intern with them?" Everybody was like, "Wow, that's really interesting. How'd you end up over there?" And so the fact that for me, I didn't get all the backlash and all the bad stuff that everybody else said. I mean, yeah, there were a few people here and there talking, but as far as like a whole heap of people turning against me, my family not liking me, my family being upset, none of that. But for my kids, unfortunately, they definitely felt the brunt of that. A lot of them are very young. And so social media and perception and peer pressure and societal norms and what's trending, all of that is more affecting them than it would be somebody who's, in her late 20s.
So we're about 2 months in to this second go around for the Trump administration. And I want you to assess it. Obviously, the Department of Education is in the news of late, some other things too, immigration issues and procedures and acts and whatever else. But let's talk about education, because that's your sweet spot. And this talk, some conservatives want to just disband and the Department of Education. People are afraid. What say you about the first 2 months of the Trump administration and specifically the Department of Education and all that's swirling there?
Well, not to sound cliche, I know everyone says this, but these are what we see when we say promises made and promises kept. Nothing that he's doing is coming as a surprise to any of us. He told us that mass deportation was going to happen on day one. He told us that dismantling the Department of Education was on his agenda. He let us know the different executive orders he planned to pass and the things he planned to do for people as he campaigned. And that's exactly what he's doing as we see these first 60 days. When it comes to the dismantlement of the Department of Education, I know for whatever reason, a lot of people have this misconception that this means that we're just wiping out all funding and support for all public schools everywhere. And I guess only the elite private school kids are going to receive an education. All of that is false. But the dismantlement of the Department of Education means that the way we see the Department of Education now is not going to be the Department of Education we know when Trump leaves office. So we're moving some things around, and we're how do I say this? Giving certain responsibilities to other departments. So, for instance, there's a lot of people concerned about disabled students, students with IEPs and 504s. These things will now be handled by the Department of Health and Human Services, which, as you guys know, is led by RFK. The thing with the Black community that I don't understand is for us to be some people who are very anti-vax. There's a lot of us who didn't get the jab. There's a lot of us who believe that vaccines are directly correlated to the rise in autism rates since the 70s. There's a lot of us who have refused to vaccinate our children. All the COVID babies beyond, a lot of them are unvaccinated children because people believe that there's something going on with these jabs. We also do not like the idea of, the dyes in our food that also are linked to not just autism, but ADHD, ADD, and also causing cancer in a lot of us as well. And so there's a lot of Black folks who supported RFK. So I don't know why they think for a second that their children would be in danger of losing any support. If anything, I think we now have the most qualified person to address and support these issues because he's the main one who's been ringing the alarm on how many more kids are being diagnosed with these learning disorders versus what those rates were when he was coming up. Additionally, you have a lot of people in higher education concerned that schools aren't going to receive funding, what's going to happen with student loans. A lot of HBCU students are wondering what's going to happen with the Pell Grant. All student financial aid services and all those things related to that are now going to be handled by the Department of Treasury, which Georgia's own Brandon Beach has just been nominated secretary of. So for all Georgians, you got one of your own in office about to make sure that everybody going to school is getting their money and the money is right. And as somebody being from Georgia, I'm not from Georgia, but him being a representative from Georgia, and us being one of the best states to do business, I would believe that, of course, he's a very, very, very competent and experienced businessman. There's a lot of people who think for whatever reason that students who only receive lunch and breakfast and then, these summer food programs, those kids are now never going to eat. Unfortunately, this is a not common fact known to many people, but school meals are handled by the Department of Agriculture. And so we haven't done anything with agriculture. I personally know Brooke Rollins. I actually started out with America First, and I know for a fact that the department is in great, great, great hands. So for everybody, worried about what's going to happen, the schools are going to close, that's not true. When we say that we're giving the power back to the states, that means that right now the Department of Education has the power to institute this national standard, standardized testing, which, as we know, does not work for anybody. Additionally, whether we like it or not, Republicans do have to admit that it's their fault that we have no children being left behind when they indeed need to be left behind. And now that we're giving this power back to the states.
Whoa, what do you mean by that, Michaelah?
We're not
need to be left behind?
There are students who need to be left behind. And when I say that, that means the No Child Left Behind Act meant that you couldn't hold children back the way that we used to when we were coming up. Unfortunately, now we're passing students who have not obtained or retained the necessary skills to move on to the next grade level. So now a classroom is only as strong as their weakest link. So if you have a child or two children that cannot read, now the entire class will be held back from reaching the levels they could have had everybody been moved on to that grade that had the necessary skills to succeed at that grade level. We are graduating students now who cannot read. We are graduating students now who cannot sign a contract. We are graduating students who cannot finish a Harry Potter book. We are graduating students who don't know the slope of a line. We're graduating students who have never heard of a quadratic equation. This is something unheard of to people my age and older. And so when you give the power back to the states, we can address these issues rather than teaching kids how to memorize answers for a national standardized test that clearly everybody is passing because we're graduating kids who do not have the skills to succeed in life. There are some children who need to get left behind, and now the states can address that.
I want to know if you believe in this president and his policies so much, you're so passionate about it, what capacity do you want to work for him in a greater capacity is, I guess, what I really want to ask.
Well, absolutely. Of course, clearly, I love education. I love my HBCU students. So naturally, I would love to continue my work in that space. That is how he met me. Every time we talk or every time he mentions me, he brings up, me, my HBCU experience, and of course, his historic funding for HBCUs. So that would be beautiful. But additionally, with my grassroots work and all of the different things that I've done throughout the years. I love the urban development space. So I know like it's very cliche for all the Black people to go to HUD, but when you understand what opportunity zones are and what we have cities like Atlanta who take full advantage of opportunity zones, what they're doing for the community and how they're, bringing in business and, of course, bettering the neighborhood. It's wonderful. And of course, I wouldn't mind that. And then I think, of course, I have a knack for relaying a message. So like an office of public liaison or, something to continue like the coalition's work that I was doing for the campaign would be wonderful as well.
There is this push-pull, right? Maybe people from a certain generation, Black elders, will say, Democrats traditionally, who I've heard your generation, I've heard you say before, you don't want to be preached to. You want to have an open dialogue and have there be mutual respect and value. So what do you have to say to some of these older people? They could be just a little bit older, but they're not willing to listen to you. Do you understand it? How do you push back?
I think if more people older than us understood that we have a fresh perspective and we know things that you guys don't, for instance, whatever song is hot right now on campus that the young people would love to see this person perform and that would probably bring them to your event, you don't even know who that is, And so it's like there's such a big disconnect. And then I think with us being in the age of social media as well, it's made it even worse because now things change and happen so fast. It's really hard to keep up. And so like me, I'm a 90s baby. So it's like I'm used to things moving at a bit slower pace. We had superstars that everyone knew. Now everybody's a vlogger, everybody's famous. Everybody's an influencer. So if you are trying to reach an audience that you can't reach, you have to engage with somebody who is engaging actively with said audience. So like, I don't necessarily surround myself with 50-plus-year-olds on the daily, but if I wanted to do something to attract a bunch of 50-plus-year-olds, I would consult some older folks. So if you want to do something for some young people and you're 54, you cannot call your 62-year-old friend and say, let's do something for the young people. I'm sorry, but y'all aren't young anymore. And that's okay. Also,
but let me push back on this. Okay. We have President Donald Trump, who has this fascinating, for lack of a better word, connection with youth. He puts some younger people, Hegseth, others, in some key roles for him. He seems, I know a little girl who said, hey, look, his TikTok's fire. Joe Biden's wasn't. This was during the campaign. So is it that when you allow yourself to listen to the next generation that it keeps you fresh, it keeps you up on it?
Yes. They have ideas that you won't. They can reach audiences that you can't. They are, more open in their understanding of, what the social climate is. Like, I think a lot of people think that because they're here and they've been here, that they've seen it all before, and therefore that makes them an expert on every subject matter. Unfortunately, the world has changed in ways that none of us could have predicted. So it's okay. Like, the young people still need to get back to sitting at the feet of their elders because there's a lot we can learn from y'all. But then the older people, the elders, need to also get back to listening to the young people. My grandma always said, I like to sit here and listen to y'all. It keeps you young. So what happened? Y'all need to come back and sit with us and let's keep each other young. But I don't really know where the disconnect came. I think, again, the age of social media, I think COVID also taught people how to be alone. So now we're all just in our phones. We don't necessarily engage the way we used to. We don't have community events that are packed out and block parties and stuff like we used to, in which that's where the young people and the elders came together. Now we pretty much only do it on holidays. And even on holidays, everybody's in their phones.
What would your response be to those who say they're hurt? They're hurt by your support, so loud about it too, of this president who they believe is divisive, hurtful, other things?
I think that I don't know why they'd be hurt because I mean, what did you ever do to help me? Hello. But additionally, I think that everybody's support for whoever they supported is all dependent on their personal experience. So if I tell you that I found it disrespectful to see illegal immigrants receiving benefits that somebody who could have aged out of foster care wouldn't have been able to get, then you can't tell me you're hurt by that because you weren't out there trying to feed me. You weren't going to give me free housing, free health care, free child care, food stamps, cash assistance every month. So how could you be hurt by that? If I say that I, don't agree with children changing their sex as young as age 6, I don't believe in giving kids puberty blockers unless medically necessary. And I can't even think of when that would be medically necessary, but just in case. I just think that's wrong. I don't like the idea of, pornographic images and themes being introduced in elementary schools. I think we should allow kids to be kids. And so if somebody's hurt by the fact that I like the idea of protecting a child's innocence, then I'm more hurt by that because what in the world do you have on your mind? Lastly, of course, I see people suffering here at home. I go door to door. I do phone call to phone call. I've worked in public service. I worked with the Public Service Commission. I mean, they handle utilities, but still, I got phone calls of people who had to choose between getting their medicine for the month or paying their light bill. And so for us to be sending billions and billions and billions of dollars every single day overseas while simultaneously ignoring the critical needs of your own citizens, people right here. How could you be hurt by the fact that I'm hurt by that? I walk by homeless people every day on my way into the Capitol. I see homeless people sleeping outside of City Hall. You see homeless people at the end of every highway, people begging for help. And yet we prioritized others rather than the people who are working and paying the taxes that are making this funding and this aid available for somebody else. If anybody's hurt by that, I think that you should look within because I feel like, what's wrong with you? Clearly, I think that a lot of people didn't vote within their interest because they were so obsessed with the fact that somebody that they didn't like was representing their true interest. At the end of the day, if you really go to church and you preach to girls that abortion is okay, are you really a preacher? Are you really following the word of God? At the end of the day, you had Jamal Bryant bring Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris' entire campaign was immigrants, LGBTQ and abortion. And it's like, these are things that do not align with anything biblically. And so for you to be in a church and preaching that to people, that's another reason why a lot of people stayed home, because they knew it was wrong to vote for the other side, but they simply couldn't bring themselves to vote for President Trump.
Just because listening to you talk, the energy, the way you can rally people around you, will you run for office one day?
Absolutely. That is the end goal. The endorsement is there, but I wouldn't run anytime soon. So y'all aren't done seeing me. The end goal is to be a U.S. Senator. How I get there, I'm just letting the Lord order my steps in his word.
That was Michaelah Montgomery. I didn't bring her on to change her mind. I brought her on to ask questions and listen. Not even fact check in real time for this one. I mean, really listen. Because if we're serious about understanding where young Black voters are headed, especially those who identify with the MAGA movement, then we have to allow for conversation. Not performance, not shame, dialogue. You may have cringed at some of what she said. You may have agreed with parts of it. That's not the point. This isn't about co-signing or canceling. It's about curiosity and respect. And maybe, just maybe, learning something new about where we are and where we're headed. Because shame has never been a strategy to winning people over.